Hello, my name is Marjorie Lee. I'm a PhD candidate in the School of Psychological Science at Macquarie University. My presentation is about the effects of learning a non-Western musical instrument on intercultural understanding among white Australians, and was conducted between and during COVID-19 lockdowns in Sydney. Intercultural tensions are increasingly evident globally, and the COVID pandemic has worsened the situation. These tensions may disrupt social cohesion due to a lack of cultural empathy, bias towards other ethnic groups. Therefore, there's a strong motivation to find strategies to nurture intercultural understanding and minimizing ethnocultural tensions. Research suggests that exposure to intercultural music engagement from other cultures, such as learning a non-Western music instrument, might be a good solution, as music is an ideal introduction to another culture. It can be experienced aesthetically and doesn't need to be in conflict with long-standing belief systems. Intercultural understanding refers to a state of empathizing, appreciating, and respect others from a different cultural background. Intercultural music engagement in culture-specific musical activities brings individuals inside the culture, as opposed to observe at a distance or at a tokenistic level without an embodied understanding. Therefore, it provides a richer embodied experience with a more nuanced cultural understanding. Limited evidence suggests musical activities such as listening, singing, learning to play a non-Western music instrument can be benefit, but evidence of its efficacy is weak and often anecdotal. So how can learning a non-Western music culture lead to intercultural understanding? Let's briefly look at this model, which was adapted from the therapeutic music capacity model. Music activities such as listening, singing, participating provides context that triggers the different affordances, such as emotional, physical, and social affordances. Musical affordances refers to what we can get from the music, and which provides active ingredients that facilitate deep embodied engagement. The deeper embodied experiences achieved through activating mechanisms engaged by music, such as embodied cognition and entrainment. Musical affordances align with the embodied mechanism, consciously and unconsciously operating simultaneously, and ultimately lead to psychosocial outcomes, such as reduced racial bias, increased cultural empathy. Therefore, we propose that intercultural understanding occurred most effectively from embodied experience with musical cultures. Learning a non-Western musical instrument should promote a deeper embodied cultural understanding. We aim to offer insights on whether learning a Chinese or Middle Eastern musical instrument could nurture greater intercultural understanding by white Australian learners. We achieve this by using a rich intercultural musical engagement, RHYME, learning program. RHYME is defined as an embodied form of music engagement in which individuals immerse themselves in the non-musical Western musical practice, which consists of rich contextual knowledge and physically learning to play the instrument. We have chosen the Middle Eastern oud and the Chinese pipa. Both are plucked string instruments that share the same ancestor, the Persian babet. It was predicted that rich embodied engagement with Chinese or Middle Eastern musical practice by white Australians should lead to genuine changes in explicit and implicit attitudes and bias, especially in increasing ethnocultural empathy, feelings of social connectedness, and instilling a positive attitude and reducing negative implicit bias towards other ethnic groups. We were only able to recruit 36 white Australians between April to September 2021 due to COVID restrictions. After exclusions, 31 participants were included in the final analysis, 15 in the Chinese BIPA group and 16 in the Middle Eastern Wood group. The rhyme learning sessions consist of two 2-hour sessions for each culture. Session 1 was a pre-recorded lecture including 4 modules. Session 2 was a hands-on instrumental learning session where the participants learned to play a folk song. Here is an example of session 1 for learning Chinese BIPA. Module 1 introduces the cultural history and social context related to the Chinese BIPA. Module 2 introduced a wide range of Chinese BIPA performance practice and musical traditions, such as different rituals, operatic, narrative, folk ensembles. Module 3 provides an overview of the BIPA instrument, the conventional and alternative tunings, notation, and basic playing techniques. Module 4 shows how the students learn to play a folk song. For Middle Eastern Oud group, students learn to play this Turkish folk song, Ustakar. For the Chinese BIPA group, students learn to play this Chinese folk song called Yin Jiao Si, Twisted Silk Thread. The following behavior measures were tested before and after the 2 learning sessions. Ethnocultural empathy measures the explicit empathy towards people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. Social connectedness measure people's perceived relationship of closeness to other people. Attitudes here measures the explicit favorable attitudes towards particular social groups. For the implicit bias, we use the implicit association test, IAT, is widely used for measuring implicit prejudice towards people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. For the purpose of timing, we will focus on the results across the 2 study groups. The graph on the left show there was a significant increase in the empathy towards people from different racial and ethnic backgrounds. The graph on the right shows this increase was primarily driven by the increase in empathic awareness, which is the awareness of the intercultural experience of other ethnic groups. Following learning sessions, there was an overall significant increase in the social connectedness to the ethnic groups. That's on the left. Graph on the right shows the increase was also significant in the social connectedness towards Chinese people. However, there were no significant changes found in the social connectedness towards Middle Eastern people or other people in general. Overall, a more favorable attitude towards ethnic groups was instilled following the rhyme learning session. That's on the left. And attitudes towards Middle Eastern people on the left and Chinese people on the right became both significantly more positive. For the implicit bias, we will look at the groups separately. Graph on the left, the implicit bias against the Chinese people were detected before the learning session in both groups. Both groups are significantly biased towards Chinese people. However, no bias was detected after the learning session in Chinese people group. That is, the rhyme with learning a Chinese instrument reduced the bias that the participant had against the Chinese people, whereas rhyme with a Middle Eastern instrument did not reduce the bias against Chinese people. This finding suggests that the impact of rhyme is specific to the type of learning. The graph on the right, the bias against the Middle Eastern people was detected both before and after the rhyme session, and both in both groups. That is, rhyme learnings did not eliminate the bias against Middle Eastern people. These findings suggest that bias against Middle Eastern people are ingrained and resistant to change, whereas bias against Chinese people can be reduced following a short rhyme learning sessions. These findings are striking. A 4-hour rhyme learning program in Chinese Pipa or Middle Eastern Oud was effective in nurturing intercultural understanding. As predicted, the positive results demonstrate that rhyme learning programs showed significant improvement in explicit attitudes. The cultural empathy, feelings of social connectedness, and positive attitudes towards ethnic groups were all significantly increased. Whilst the reduction in the implicit bias was partially supported, only white Australian learners in the Chinese people group showed a significant reduction towards Chinese people. One explanation is that the findings were as predicted, that the rhyme is effective in cultivating one's beliefs through deep embodied engagement. That is, after rhyme learnings, participants explicitly become aware of the changes in their attitudes towards people from other cultures. They were able to report the experience through perceived changes in their beliefs. They felt more empathetic towards Chinese or Middle Eastern people and felt more connected to them. On the other hand, deep experience through rhyme sessions bring implicit patterns to the surface, enable the implicit bias to be detectable, but not easily changeable. This means longer and a deeper learning may reduce the bias. Furthermore, the pattern of the results suggests that the effectiveness of the rhyme program depends on the nature of the cultural bias and the people's existing pre-attitudes towards other people. That is, negative implicit bias are deeply rooted. Once internalized, people may not be aware of their bias or the consequence of their biased action. For example, people who are highly tolerant may show strong bias without conscious awareness. Overall, this study demonstrates that the rhyme learning program was effective in its impact on both explicit and implicit attitudes. In turn, implementing rhyme for longer duration is likely to have much more profound and lasting impact. The study provides the first found experimental evidence for the rhyme, such as learning a non-Western musical instrument, may be an effective educational tool to promote intercultural understanding. and shows how music education can have a crucial role in minimizing ethnocultural tensions. The major limitation of this study was a lack of statistic power with a small sample size due to COVID restriction. But the good news is this study is ongoing. We're collecting more data, so we will be able to explore reliable outcomes. In the future, we plan to apply the rhyme learning paradigm to culture-specific populations and programs. For example, to compare the psychosocial benefits of learning a musical culture of one's own culture or that of others. In conclusion, we have demonstrated that white Australians taught with 4-hour learnings in Chinese or Middle Eastern wood can be effectively be nurtured in intercultural understanding. The result supports the rhyme learning as a valuable, evidence-based educational strategy. Rhyme learning is short, effective, and enjoyable. This study has provided insights into intercultural understanding through music education and contribute to reducing ethnocultural tensions in our multicultural society. Here are some references and acknowledgement. Thank you for your attention. I look forward to your feedback.